We're going to start with roll call. Beth, can you help us with that?
Smith,
Here.
McCoy,
Here.
Welch,
Here.
Alrighty, all three of the committee members are here, and next we will move on to public participation, and we have one speaker, Brooke Andrews. Hello, if you could state your name and address, and then you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
How does it work? Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Brooke Andrews, yikes. 3150 Outing Court is my address in Green Bay, 54313. So I'm here almost completely unprepared, almost completely off the cuff. I just sat in my car for about an hour trying to come up with notes and talking points for trying to decide what I should speak on tonight, or if I should speak or not. So again, I'm a little bit scattered, not entirely prepared, but these are the notes that I have. Today I got 4 phone calls from teachers, and I lost track of the number of phone calls I received from peers and friends and parents in our district. It's disturbing to me that I received all of these phone calls and text messages from people. Again, I said multiple teachers and friends included, but everybody's in a frenzy about the likelihood that tonight this board is going to pass a vote to mandate masks for all of our students to start this school year. That obviously is in contrast to the most recent board decision, whatever, 2 weeks ago or a month ago, whenever that decision was made, to mask our under 7th graders, and then 7th and above would be optional. I don't know how these people know this is coming. I don't know if a communication has gone out to the school board or to the teachers or to the staff. I don't know that, but they've come to me with that concern because I feel like they know something has been told to them. So yet again, I'm here in support of choice and options. I'm here on behalf of myself and my family and all of the rest of the majority of the people in our district that stand for those things as well, choice and option. I don't know what you will discuss tonight, but I certainly hope that you will address all of the questions we've been asking about masking and quarantining for the past several months. While all surrounding districts have made announcements and have plans in place, here we sit 3 weeks from the start of the school year with so many unanswered questions and no direction. In your discussions tonight, I please ask you to consider the following. People that have chosen to vaccinate have no more protections against catching and spreading the virus than those that have been vaccinated. Vaccinated people can still contract and spread COVID. The only benefit to the vaccinated persons is that their symptoms, should they come in contact with the virus, be less severe than someone unvaccinated. However, I repeat, they can still catch and spread the virus. Therefore, creating quarantine protocols should either be non-existent, meaning the discussion tonight should be about eliminating quarantining altogether, or the rules you choose to impose should apply to across the board the same to vaccinated and unvaccinated persons. And from there, we, the parents, need to know what that looks like. As of right now, if you implement quarantining guidelines similar to what you've done in the past, for the past year and a half, we will have kids missing somewhere between 5 and 10 days of learning with no virtual option to stay caught up on their classwork, as you've already eliminated the expectation of our teaching staff that they will not have to do virtual and in-person learning models. While I feel you've already got your minds made up about masking, I ask that you please consider making masking optional. We've been fighting this fight too long, and it's optional in the rest of our worlds, in the rest of our everyday lives. While we're all making our own choices as to the benefits or consequences of masking, masking in schools does nothing and goes nowhere if many or most aren't wearing them outside of school. Again, choice and risk assessment. It's different for everyone, should be a decision made individually in our own homes by the parents to send our kids to school with or without a mask. Please consider that you're only hurting our kids. The longer this craziness goes on, this is the 3rd school year that our kids are heading into with COVID protocols and ramifications in place. We're hurting them more than we're helping them, socially, emotionally, academically, hurting hurting our kids, not helping our kids. Please consider sharing with us what your end goals are. What are you trying to do? What is the end goal? We all know we're not going to eradicate this virus. We cannot make it go away. We also know that 50% of our population has been vaccinated. That's 1 in 2 people. That's half of the population. Of the 50% of the unvaccinated population, many have had and have successfully beat COVID. We should all be like this herd immunity that we had heard so much about. We should be there, right? I mean, if 50%, 1 in 2 people has been vaccinated and another, say, I don't know, 10, 15, 20% of people has come in contact with COVID and has beat it, we have, those people have antibodies in like natural antibodies in their own immunities to this disease. So we should be at this herd immunity that we've been talking about for so long, like a year and a half. Vaccinating and masking haven't made this whole thing go away. What makes this board think that they should know what needs to be done to prevent those around us from getting it? Please, everything that we've done so far has not worked. What is the target we need to shoot to get back to pre-COVID living? What do we have to do to get there? Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, our first discussion item is going to be the finance quarterly report and the finance ESSER report.
Yep, so for this report, we're going to have our, yes. Oh. We have one more public comment, so hang tight, Angie.
Thank you, and we have Beth Lane is going to be speaking. Beth, please state your name, and I just did, but state your name and address, and I will set the timer then. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Beth Lane. I live at 1841 7th Street in Green Bay. I just wanted to take a couple minutes. Am I not being loud? It's on. I hear myself. Okay. Sure. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and say thank you for all of the effort and the work that you guys have put in the last year and a half. This is not easy for anybody. And I would just like to ask that you continue to follow CDC recommendations and the recommendations of all of the actual experts when it comes to how we should be handling this virus and how we should be protecting and keeping our children safe. And I guess that's pretty much it. So thank you. Stay the course. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. Okay, now I think we can go to our first discussion item, and that is going to be the finance quarterly report and finance ESSER report. And I think Angie is going to be doing.
Yep, it'll be Angie Robley, our CFO, and Angie, I will share my screen as you go through this.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'll let Josh pull this up. Everybody should have a copy in front of them as well. It was posted. So tonight I'm going to be going through our financial report for the year end. So I have come before the board in the past and done a quarterly report, kind of just giving an update as to where we were coming in with actuals versus budget. And now tonight, I am just going to review and summarize where we've ended up for the fiscal year end 2021. So you can skip to, yeah, that's good, the executive summary. So again, this is a format that everyone is used to seeing. This is, the same format that I've brought before the board in the past. Nothing really has changed here, but want you to keep in mind that the numbers that we're looking at are unaudited for 2021. Our auditors come in next week to finalize their review and their audits. And then we don't finalize this report and send it to DPI until December. So we have a couple months yet, but I'm confident that the numbers are at least as accurate as we can make them. And I do not anticipate any changes, or if they are, very minor. You can scroll down there a little bit. So as you are all aware, the board had approved the formal budget on October 26, 2020 last year. Same process will be coming in October of this year. I will be proposing the 21-22 budget to the board in October, and then you'll vote and certify it at the end of October. So the same process as we've done in the past years. Just as a note, this was the second year of the state biennial budget. And our future projections for our upcoming budget for the first year of the biennial is we are expecting a slight decrease in enrollment, flat revenue from the state. As we are all aware, we have not received anything for general fund, and then a 4.5% increase in property values, and projected to stay the course for the next few years. You can scroll down to the next page, please. So this is just the district funds explanation summary. I won't bore you with all the details, but this is what our budget is made up of, all of the funds. But tonight our focus will be on Fund 10, or the general fund, and Fund 27, special education, because that makes up a majority of our budget. So you can scroll through this. Okay, so this is our the revenue dashboard. Again, similar to what you've seen in the past, but this time it's really for the general and special education funds, just showing us that for our year-to-date revenues from budgets compared to actuals coming in, we were just shy a little bit, and we hit the 97% mark, which is right in line with what we had expected. Our top 10 sources of revenue in that box, that graphic there, obviously the equalization aid and property tax, that makes up about 70% of our general fund. So those came in as expected. We know those numbers after we set the levy. And then the red and the purple, I wouldn't focus too much on those, but the local sources really make up the big portion of that is our property taxes that I just spoke of. And then the state sources are equalization aid, and then also some of the state grants that run through DPI. So we came in as expected, nothing alarming. You can scroll to the expenditures, Josh, please. So here, the expenditure dashboard, same thing. We came in a little bit shy of what we had projected for our expenditures for 2021 at about 95. I think that says 90, yeah, 95%. Our salaries and benefits were a little bit short, which was to be expected. We obviously were in a strange year, so some of our vacancies had not been filled. And then also our benefits, our health insurance, we had a great year again for the second year in a row. So we had a slight adjustment, which we had seen same thing last year. So the benefit piece was a little bit short as well. And then really, again, what we had expected. When we scroll, let's see here, the total expenditures, those graphics, again, those top 10 expenditures, those are really salaries and benefits. As I'll speak in the next page, Josh, we'll kind of focus in on the results where we came in. Benefits and salaries, no surprise, human capital makes up about 75% of our budget. So, you know, those numbers, those are really the numbers that we watch closely every month as we pay twice a month to all of our salaried employees. So when you look at the general fund in that second box there, it shows all of the funds and how we and what the results were. But the one that we want to focus in on again is the general fund and the special education fund. So the general fund this year, we had a surplus of about $7.3 million, which is in line with what we adjusted for health insurance, our health insurance self-funded plan. And again, same kind of adjustment happened the previous year where we put some money into the fund balance. So this was to be expected. We had been tracking this. So it was really no surprise. So we were at a 7.3 surplus this year for 2021. Can you just scroll down a little bit, Josh, please? So the expenditures by object, that pie chart, that really shows you again where the bucket of expenditures are. Major salaries and benefits is the blue and the orange. And then the contracted services is another large part of our budget and expenditures. The graphic on the right, the bottom right-hand corner kind of shows like the revenues, shows where we get, you know, from month to month, kind of what our cash flow looks like. So this is a really good graphic showing like when we get our funds. So when you see that big jump, like from May to June, that's when we get our state aid, our equalized aid payment. So 70, 80 million. So that's, you know, kind of shows where we have months where we don't really get as much in revenues, but because we have a significant fund balance, which we've talked about before, we no longer have to short-term borrow as a district. So we save the taxpayers money and interest, and which is great. So we haven't had to short-term borrow in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. Okay, you can scroll to the next page. So kind of a summary. Again, staffing expenditures, we talked about that. Salaries and benefits account for approximately 75% of the operating budget. Our ESSER funds, we're all aware of, our CARES funding or ESSER funding. And that's what Lisa is going to follow up my presentation with, is just kind of where we're at, our last quarter claim, and then some of the amounts that have been solidified since we last spoke to the board. The enrollment, the September 3rd Friday count last year was 20,278 students, which is a decrease of 872 students from the previous year. We do expect to see some of those students come back and get some rebound. So stay tuned. That's coming up right around the corner, September, our 3rd Friday count. Health insurance, like I mentioned, for the 2nd straight year, had an excellent claims to premium ratio, which resulted in a huge savings for the district this year, in the tune of about $7 million. And then the summary of the classroom instruction kind of just outlines where we were, in the strange year that we had, the 2021 school year. So I won't go through that or review that. So all in all, feel good about where the numbers came in. We are diligently working on our 21-22 school budget, wrapping up the 2021 school year with the auditors. So we kind of bounce back and forth between years. So it'll be nice to get into 1 year sooner than later. So, okay, this next page, notice of change in adopted budget. So this is a new process that we brought to the board in the, I believe, February or March of this past year. This is really a reflection of our budget transfers. So what we adopt in October, these are the changes that have happened since February, when the board voted on, voted on the budget transfers that occurred from July 1 until I think it was January 1. So this is the last 6 months. So basically, like an example of when the budget would actually be changed is if we received more grant money than what we had expected. So when you adopted the budget in October, we thought that a grant was going to be a certain amount, and then we get notice that that the grant increases. Like common school funds is a popular one that we usually get a little bit more money than what we find out in October. So when we do that budget transfer, that amount that we increase lands on this sheet. So the board will vote on these budget transfers next month. So this will be part of the consent agenda, and then we'll post it in the Press Gazette. It has to be posted 10 days after the vote, and then we just move forward. So this was a recommendation. This is something that we had not done as a district in the past. And it was a recommendation by our auditors last year. So we've implemented that change. So this is something that you'll be seeing twice a year. And then the board will vote on it the following month after I bring it to this committee. So are there any questions in regards to the budget transfers or the quarterly or fiscal year-end report, annual report? Okay. So Lisa, I'm going to pass it off to you to talk about our CARES funding.
Lisa, which one do you want first, the ESSER or the CARES deck?
Let's go with the longer document, the ESSER expenditures as of June 30th. Thanks, Josh. You'll notice that at each ops meeting, committee meeting, you will see the same two documents that I'll be presenting. It will always be this longer document, and it will have the ESSER expenditures as of the most recent quarterly claim date. So our most recent quarterly claim would have been June 30th, which those claim amounts have all been determined and submitted, not yet finalized by DPI, but they are in progress. This document is the longer document that it's several pages long. It begins with an overview of those three larger ESSER grants. ESSER 1 includes ESSER and gear. So it includes that, larger ESSER 1 grant of 5 million, a little over 5 million. And then also the gear grant, which is almost 3 million. It gives you the overview, and then it gives you a couple of pages of what all the allowable costs are under each of those 3 larger ESSER grants. And then the page that we'll pay the most attention to is the final page of this document, which will have the cumulative amount claimed to date. So in that left-hand column are the program types. So those are the main program types for which funds can be budgeted. So funds are always budgeted under one of those programs, and it will give you the cumulative amount claimed as of June 30th. So that's not the amount that was claimed June 30th. That's the amount up to this point. There are a total of 7 different program types under which funds could be budgeted. And then Josh, if you would go to the other document, which is a 1-pager. You will see again the program types along the left, but you won't see 7 there because so far claims have only been made under 5 program types. And then you will see, instead of just seeing the total amount claimed to date, so addressing long-term school closure, there's been $1,321,470.99 claimed cumulatively, so to date, but then it breaks it down for each of those quarterly claims, how much was claimed. And so ESSER 1 again includes the ESSER grant and the gear grant. And if you scroll down just a little bit, Josh, you'll see that we have not claimed funds, public school funds yet under the gear grant. We've only claimed private school funds under the gear grant. So the bulk of our funds have been claimed under ESSER so far. So are there any questions? Or Angie, anything you'd like to fill in?
No, I think you did a great job, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, unless anybody has any last questions. I think we're, oh, Laura.
This is more of a comment. It's not really a question. That's if you were watching this presentation, you know, you might be, these numbers are big and scary, you know, but basically what it does for me is it illustrates that, you know, when brought to scale, just how much it takes to educate 20,000 children. And I know everyone in this room already knows that, but if you were watching this presentation and you saw those numbers, you might have a, you know, kind of a panic, but this is what it takes. This is the reality. So I just want to say that.
All right, well, thank you both for presenting to us and updating us, and well, this goes to the board at our next meeting,
Yes,
which is September
13th.
Thank you. So September 13th, we'll be talking about this at the regular board meeting. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good night. Okay, and then our next discussion item will be the fall planning return to learn. And Steve, I think you're going to probably kick that off for us.
I am. Thank you for this opportunity. You see the slide deck up there. A couple things before we get started. First of all, recognize that while I'll be doing the talking to start with, there are many, many people that have been an ongoing part of this process. We recognize you may have questions as you go through here. We would invite you to stop and ask those. Recognize that I may not be answering them. That may be some of the folks that are either in the room with us or that are online who've really drilled down deep into some of these areas to make sure that we are ready to go to start school. And then just a reminder for context, what we're going to talk about tonight is based on board recommendation that came to us in June. And so you may see some things in there that you look at and say, I would like something different than what you have there. And I would just note that if there are things that you see in here that you would like us to reconsider before the school year starts, that may need action by the board in order to do that. As Dawn just noted, our next board meeting is September 13th. So as we're going through the process, if there are things that you see that you would like changes in practice that might not be in alignment with current board motions, that we would need to then petition our board officers for a special meeting in order to address those, to make sure we have time to get them in place before the school year starts. So you may want to keep track of those as we're going through. And if you've got questions about that, we would certainly be more than happy to answer those. And then maybe one other point, just as you think about the why behind the work that we're doing here. The most important thing that we can do at this point in time, based on our collective work together as an administrative team, is to do everything that we can to make sure that our children get back into school on September 1st. And then the next most important thing we can do is to make sure that they stay in school after they've returned. So that is the guiding process that we've used to take that board motion that came to us in June and to operationalize that. Josh, next slide, please. So we've taken a vote on this as a board. We've said it several times at the board table, but just a reminder again that we will be in person 5 days a week. And we recognize that for some parents, that does not meet their needs. And so to that end, the board authorized us to start a 4K to 5 online program for our elementary school students. So that is up and running right now. We also have had in the past and will continue to have an online option available to students at the secondary level in grades 6 through 12 through the John Dewey Academy of Learning. We know that as of this past week, we continue to get inquiries from parents about how they may be able to move their children into one of those two programs. We recommend that parents go directly to their building principals to have that conversation with them. There's an application process for both of those programs, and those building principals are in the best position to help parents if that's a choice that they would like to make for their kids.
You may not have this, but I'm very curious as to like how many people are going to participate in the 4K through 5, the new school. Do we have kind of a ballpark number at this moment?
We're at about 80 right now.
Okay, thank you.
Could somebody repeat that?
Yes. So the answer is we have about 80 students enrolled right now. All right, Josh. Thank you. All right, so face covering. So again, remember that this is based on the motion that was passed by the board in June. And so right now for students outdoors, that's optional. That's for everybody. That's for students and staff and visitors. And yes, we do have visitors that are outside. They're working on everything from community gardens to working with kids while they're out of the playgrounds. Indoors, the board motion was optional for vaccinated staff, students, and visitors, strongly recommended for those that are unvaccinated. At the middle level, we ran into a bit of a challenge, and that was how to make sure that we could take what the board had passed and operationalize it so that it not only met the intent of the board motion, but also ensured that there was some way for us to actually make it practical in the schools. So you'll see that at the middle level, masks will be required wherever 6th grade students are present. Okay, so as you look at that parenthetical, that's multi-grade classrooms. So if you have 6th graders that are in with 7th or 8th graders, in the hallways and other common areas, and then when they're entering and exiting the buildings. So in classrooms or areas of the buildings where only 7th and 8th grade students are present with their faculty in those classrooms, those students would then have the option to wear their face coverings. At pre-K and elementary, the board motion was that all staff, students, and visitors would be required to wear their face coverings. And then a reminder, transportation, we've received questions about this from parents. This is a federal guideline that requires whether you're at the airport, on Amtrak, or on a school bus, that you be masked. And so that is the guideline that we would have in place. And then in regard to face coverings, one of the things that's come up, we've received questions about this from staff and also from the general public and parents, is that we will actively ensure that students' choice is respected, whether they are masking or not, that the district will not tolerate any type of behavior that would be construed as bullying or harassment based on that individual choice of the student. We do have on hand an available stock of disposable masks. Those would be, those face coverings would be available for students at school. We'll also have them on buses. We don't want a student to arrive at a bus stop failing to bring their mask with them and be unable to get on the bus and ride to school. So we will have those available for students. Symptom screener. So we have an online symptom screener that allows faculty and staff to go in and complete that. There's an app that's available for students that is loaded on their laptops, but then again, is also available to them through that app. And they're able to go in and answer some very short questions. If indeed any of the symptoms are noted on there, then that triggers a response from our school health department. I can tell you from personal experience through an error in self-reporting that if you do inadvertently indicate that you are affirmative on any of those questions, they'll call you within about 15 minutes. So they're very quick with that. Josh? Additional mitigation strategies. You remember that when we started this process, it was a 6-foot distance recommendation from the CDC. They had dropped it down to 3 feet. They do say, and it's real key, that last clause in there, whenever and wherever possible. So we do that to the greatest extent that we can. As we made clear on several occasions over the course of the last school year, because of the number of students that we have in some of our buildings, it's simply not possible for us to ensure that students have that minimum of 3 feet. And so frequently, if you're in common areas, you'll see that students are closer together than that. We continue with our regular classroom cleaning processes and the disinfecting that goes along with that. We do have plexiglass barriers that are available for classrooms. Our water fountains are now currently open. We are recommending that where the bottle filling stations are available, that students and staff use those. Isolation and quarantine, we continue to work on this as the guidelines change on a fairly frequent basis from the CDC. Based on what we know at this point in time, if students and staff members are fully vaccinated and have no symptoms, there is no requirement that they quarantine. Okay. If a staff member or a student is fully vaccinated and is symptomatic, they are required to test. However, they will not need to quarantine while awaiting the results of the test if they have not had a close contact. Okay. And then the fourth bullet on there, if they're not fully vaccinated, they've got a non-household close contact, they do have to quarantine for 10 days. They return on day 11. If the students or staff members are not fully vaccinated, has a close contact, has a household close contact, then they have to quarantine for 20 days. So those are according to the CDC guidelines. As a matter of fact, when we were on break in between the committees, I was out talking to one of our healthcare providers to get some clarification on this because the CDC continues to upgrade or update their quarantine requirements just to validate that these are compliant with the current CDC recommendations. So that's a little bit complicated. Are there any questions that I can answer for you about quarantining and how that works? All right, thank you, Josh. Instruction during the quarantine. So we recognize that we may have instances in which students are quarantined and they'll be working through the assigned contact tracer, serving as a bridge to the school, that we will develop a quarantine student learning plan. And that will be developed by the school, working in conjunction with the student and or their parents to ensure that education continues while those students are out on quarantine. We anticipate you might have some questions about that. Yes.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to expand on that a little bit. I've had a lot of questions about this and like what's the timeline on something like this?
And Vicky's coming up to the table right now, and we may have some folks online that we need to call on.
Can you be more specific about timeline? the turnaround time from,
Yeah, so day one, somebody's has to isolate or quarantine. How soon can they get the educational services that they need?
we're going to start off with a goal of 24 hours. But with the understanding that depending upon the number of students, it might be longer than that.
I mean, this is just going to be a huge strain on our teachers. There's just no other way to put it. I mean, you could have 10 kids. So 24 hours is a lofty goal. Okay.
Yes, it is. And we do understand that the teams right now at the schools are working on what that plan can actually look like, and they're being very creative. And they plan by the end of the week to get back to me about their ideas. Some of it might have a financial impact, which we have great concern about. So we're going to have to balance that.
Can you tell me what you mean by financial impact?
If we have a large amount of students and say, for example, it's a student at the secondary level that could have 6 classes each day, maintaining contact with each teacher to ensure that all of the students, depending on how many there are, have access to their education could be complex. And perhaps we hire paraprofessionals or repurpose some positions to help do that support.
So additional facilitation, people in place to help that as those kids go out of quarantine, then those resources, human resources can be mobilized in other areas. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Sorry, Vicky, in the elementary school, how is it going to look there? Like, are teachers going to be given enough time to do things like, I'm trying to word this right, like, are they going to be given, like, you're going to have to go online with them, or you're going to do, virtual, and what, like.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And that's been one of our concerns as well, because we do know that the way we did it last year put a lot of stress on our teachers. That's why this process will actually put it into their hands, what the education could look like. Some of our teachers were very comfortable doing the asynchronous. Others, it could cause a great deal of stress.
Are the teachers having some input during this time?
Yes, we have the principals focusing on it right now. And we met with GBEA earlier in the week. We'll be gathering more input from them as well.
So one of the things that is different this year is that you can see that we're going to be working with the Department of Health Services, and we'll be able to provide free PCR testing during the school year. And this is another layer of protection as we again strive to make sure that students are able to attend on a regular basis. This does require parent guardian consent. We had some conversation earlier today about how to manage that. And we're looking for an opportunity to make it as easy as possible for parents to do that. And then for our school health professionals to be able to track that. Then they will also be in direct conversation with our nursing staff prior to any of this taking place. And then the test itself, again, 100% free. They're looking at a really quick turnaround time. They're actually going to be shuttling these back and forth to Madison for results, and they're hoping to be able to get those answers back to us very quickly. Again, a reminder, if the student is vaccinated, they won't have to go through the quarantine. They'll be able to be on campus while we're waiting the results of those assessments. Visitors, volunteers, and
Oh, can I ask quick, who's going to be conducting the test?
let's see, I'm trying to look and see who's online. I think I've got Kristen's on. All right, there she is. Yep. Kristen, you want to handle that one for us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so as of right now, we're planning on our 13 district nurses doing the test, and we do have some contact tracers who are also interested. in DHS, and we are partnered with Purveya. We'll be doing the instructions on all of us to make sure that we are doing the test correctly.
Just out of curiosity, Kristen just said we have 13 district nurses. Can anyone tell me how many we had before we had to start dealing with COVID?
We had 9,
Okay,
and we hired 4 more additional nurses at the beginning of COVID.
very good. Thank you.
Yep.
So let's say they do that symptomatic tracer thing at home and they pop up, would they get one of these tests? Is that how that would work? You know, like if you're at home and you go through that, like you were talking?
So Kristen, I think the question is if you are in close contact with someone at home, would you be able to do the testing at school?
Yes, you can. And we can also offer it to all of our building employees also. If they were home, we would advise them not to send their child to school to be tested, though we would encourage them to go to one of the testing facilities. If they're in school, we would do the testing when they're at school. Does that help answer that question?
Yes, but like, let's say you're at home and you look on the computer and he has a runny nose and a low-grade fever. Now, do you just keep him home or do you want to find out if he has COVID or not?
Definitely
I mean?
want to find out. Yep,
Yeah.
definitely want to find out
Yeah.
if he has COVID.
Okay.
We know that we have the ability to, we're allowed to do testing at home, but we don't know how stressed we're going to be
Right,
you know,
right.
with bodies and 42 buildings and things like that. So, you
But
know,
there is a place that they can go. So that's good.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
So Bellin has increased their testing. I do know that from talking with them this last weekend. St. Vincent's has increased their testing sites, again, just due to the high number of positives recently. We still have Walgreens and CVS and some other local pharmacies that are also testing at this time.
Thank you, Kristen. So visitors, volunteers, and community partners. So we know that they play a key role in educating our kids. We want to make sure that we've got the opportunity to take full advantage of them. So they will be allowed on school campuses outdoors. And those that serve an educational purpose will be allowed indoors. We will ask that they complete the same check-in process and the same symptom screener as they come in. And then they will also have to follow the same face covering guidelines. Yes.
So I'm going to ask the hard question, going backwards just a little bit. What do we do if parents send their kids to school sick?
So that won't be new to us. And Kristen, you're more than welcome to jump in here, but I'll just offer that that has been an issue for many years, long before I think I became an educator. And so we obviously want to work with the students to make sure that they are safe while they're at school. And then we want to make sure that their fellow students are safe. So Kristen?
Yep. In our plan, just like we had last year, if they are exhibiting any symptoms of COVID, each one of our schools has got an isolation room. And that room is being observed by a staff member. The child will be evaluated in there. This year, we have that added benefit of being able to offer the PCR COVID test if the parents are in agreement, or that we would expect the parents to come and get that child.
If it's a school where there isn't a nurse readily available, who would those duties fall to?
So initially the clerical, which is what we've done as long as I've been in the district, which is now going on 9 years. They have thermometers, they can do temperatures, just do that really quick high level assessment. We can do video calls with our nurses. We can have the nurses go to the buildings. We cover each other very, very well, that if someone is tied up somewhere, we can run from school to school. So we do have many options to help take care of that child.
I'm not really concerned. I'm asking these questions because these are going to be the big questions that parents are going to want to know.
Absolutely.
And teachers.
Yep.
Thank you. Athletics, and again, looking at where we're at as we move into the fall, we have both indoor and outdoor sports, just a reminder for folks. So we will be using locker rooms. Again, when we transport students to and from competitions, that is on school buses that are governed by the federal government's requirement that all people on the bus wear the face covering, so we'll be doing that. We will have our concession stands open, and we will also not have any restrictions on the number of spectators. They'll be required to follow whatever the enforced masking is at the venue, so whether they're ours or they're at someone else. We will be allowing overnight travel. That happens most frequently when you look at regional and state level competitions. We will be allowing those end of the season banquets. That last bullet on there, if they're diagnosed, they will have to follow that medical clearance process prior to returning to their sport. Okay. Activities, again, the same thing with our transportation and concession. Again, no restriction on spectators. We wanted to make sure that we looked at this separately from our athletic component when you consider everything from show choir to school plays and things like that. Again, allowing overnight travel and banquets. You'll notice that we specifically note on there that dances and proms would be allowed. Field trips, we will again allow students to participate on field trips. They will have to wear face coverings on the buses. And then the third bullet there, face covering rules apply on field trips unless ours do, unless the particular destination is a stricter face covering policy than we do, in which case then we would have to follow that host's face covering policy. We will make sure to notify parents in advance so they understand what the rules are prior to sending their kids on those field trips. In-person meetings, outdoors, follow district guidelines. Indoors, we'll be looking at social distancing as a key to that. And we are requiring that virtual attendance be an option for anyone who wishes to participate. So for instance, this week, think about professional development for teachers as they get ready to come back to school. In some cases, we've determined that it is advantageous for us to make sure that our staff are on site for the start of the school year. And so we elect to go all virtual simply to avoid having that many people in a room at once. That was the case with our full administrator meeting last week. Would have preferred to do it on site, but we would have had our entire administrative team together. We wanted to make sure we didn't put ourselves in a position where we had a mass quarantine from that. Cleaning and sanitizing, the CDC recommendations are in place. We will follow those. That has to deal with sanitizing high touch areas. We also are reverting to our normal cleaning processes, but offering the same optional disinfecting of surfaces by building staff as we've used in the past. Cleaning our bathrooms and the bathroom rotations that we were using last time, we will not be using this time. So that'll allow easier use of restroom facilities by classroom teachers. And then if there is a positive, we'll be doing the sanitization process that we've done in the past. Yes, Nancy.
Are you following the cleaning things in the elementary school like you did last year with specials?
Yes. Sorry. Yes, we are. The big change has been in product for us. So the product that we're using now affords us an opportunity. We don't have to go through the special processes that we did last year. And then we're able to make some of those available for staff if they wish to use them in between.
So will the elementary teachers still lose their prep time because of specials? Like specials are cut short to do the cleaning in between?
Sorry, I was thinking you were actually talking about in the rooms themselves. No, so the way that it is set up right now, that's optional for the classroom teachers. And so that no longer, that requirement is not there in between. So they've got more flexibility with that. Food service. So we'll be using assigned seating wherever possible. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, allows us to make sure that students are spaced as well as possible. also is easier for us for contact tracing if we have to deal with that. No restrictions on utilizations of tables. Again, cleaning and sanitizing between the meal periods. And we'll be continuing to work with prepackaged food where possible. I think that might be our last one, Josh. Yep. All right, so we went through that relatively quickly. Again, a couple of reminders. This is based on our June board policy that was passed. It was our attempt to operationalize it. Probably the one on there that is maybe of most interest when we get to the board table. If there's a follow-up conversation about this, is at the middle level where we had to try to figure out what to do with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. That significant change was that we would have masking wherever 6th graders are present. So essentially 7th and 8th graders would only be masked in classrooms where there are only 7th and 8th graders present. Much of the rest of what you saw tonight is an extension of the work that we did last year. There are some changes to those practices that we put in place last year that are again reflective of changes that we've received from the CDC and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. Yes, Nancy.
So has the custodial staff been updated on all of these things and they understand about and everything's good?
Matter of fact, they were intimately involved in the processes for some of these recommendations, and I see Mike Stangel's on, so I'm going to ask him to chime in here.
Yes, we have sent emails out to all of our staff, letting them know what the new protocols will be for the fall starting. These all will start after summer school, which just ended last Friday.
So when we met in the end of July and we talked about masking, we were at, I believe, Brown County low, medium for cases. We had more than doubled the 7 days prior to when we met. We are now at high. I know you meet with the other superintendents in the area and the local health professionals. What are they telling you?
So we met last Thursday as the group of CISA 7 superintendents, and we do indeed have representatives from local healthcare in there with us. Their recommendation was to move to full masking as the best possible mitigation factor for us beyond vaccination to ensure that we get kids in school and keep them in school.
How do we look for subs? I guess I'm thinking of this as a logistical standpoint, right? We have a strain of virus that can now make vaccinated teachers sick. Do we have the subs to cover for teachers that get sick? I guess, you know what, I'm thinking logistically. I agree with you. Our priority has to be keeping our schools open. What does this look like with the Delta variant?
So again, for us, if we have teachers who have been exposed but are vaccinated, they would be able to continue teaching while they're awaiting test results. If they wind up having to quarantine, obviously then, as you said, we'll need a substitute in the classroom for them during that time frame. I think I know over the course of the last years, we've had conversations at the board table. Substitute teachers continue to be a challenge for us. And it's not just here in Green Bay, but it's throughout Brown County and the state of Wisconsin. Substitute teachers are just in short supply. So that obviously stresses the system because we're going to have our regular absences that occur just through people getting sick or needing to be out for various reasons. And so in a system that already struggles to make sure that we're able to fill the regular occurring vacancies, to have additional vacancies that could occur due to quarantining will stress that.
Well, I'm going to be really honest here that the majority of the feedback, phone calls, emails that I've received from very, very anxious parents and staff members are very concerned about having optional masking this fall. And every single reputable group, CDC, every professional group has strongly recommended universal masking. at some point, if our goal is to keep our kids in school, to get them there and keep them there, I feel like we need to consider that. So
So as you look at the deck that we shared with you, was there anything in there that we operationalized from the first motion that the board passed that raised any concerns with you as we move into the fall in light of the comments that you just made? That's for anyone.
if we were to go in that direction, I'm speaking only for myself now. I trust that you guys will know how to adapt this slide deck and this information and to let our students and staff and families know how to proceed. So I can't tell you specifically what would have to be changed in this information, which I have no problem with as it is right now, because that is what we have right now. But if we were thinking about a large change, then of course things would have to change on that as well.
I mean, as we heard earlier, what we've heard about the Delta variant is that vaccinated and unvaccinated people are able to spread it equally. So I guess when we talk about masking, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, does that make a difference? I mean, if you are a seventh grade teacher and you are choosing, you've been vaccinated, but you've also been exposed based off of the recommendations that the CDC provided, you don't have to quarantine, you can still keep your class, but you will potentially be teaching students that are unvaccinated, and you can spread the virus as much as anybody else. Yeah, I definitely think it warrants additional conversation.
The people that are reaching out to us are clearly frightened and very, very concerned about this fall. And I don't think any of us want to go back to what we had last year.
And I think it's important to remember about the possibility of vaccinations for the younger people too. You know, hopefully that could be done within like a semester at the end of this year, beginning of next year. And I'm still thinking still mask, just because you don't want, you want to keep the transmission down as low as you can so everybody can stay in school. And if we use all of the mitigation things properly, I'm just hoping, you know, because everybody needs to be in school. So.
And thanks for that feedback. So as you indicated, we've gone through the process of operationalizing the previous motion. And if there is any conversation at the board table and there is any revision to that motion, we would use this as the template for doing that update. We would make any changes to that, get that back to you as a board to review, and also make sure that it's available for students and for the general public to review.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Steve, any other business? Are we all good?
All good.
Okay, then we need to adjourn. Somebody want to move that?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.